My name is Cherish Frederick, and this is my story, a story I never thought I would live to tell. I was born and raised in Abuja, in a quiet Christian home filled with love, discipline, and faith. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Frederick, were respected in our community, known for their good morals, honesty, and service to God. They taught me from a young age that life without Christ is empty, and that obedience to God's word is the surest path to peace. I grew up believing them. I never missed church, never went to parties, and never envied the flashy lifestyles of my classmates. People used to call me church girl, but I didn't mind. My life was simple, peaceful, and full of purpose, or so I thought. Everything began to change the day I met Jennifer. She joined our school in my final year of secondary school. She was beautiful, confident, and stylish, the kind of girl everyone noticed. She spoke with boldness, laughed freely, and always had a crowd around her. To be honest, I admired her. She seemed so full of life, so free, so fearless, everything I wasn't. We became friends quickly. She would tell me about her weekend outings, her boyfriends, and the expensive gifts she got from admirers. I was shocked, but she always brushed it off, saying, "Cherish, you're too uptight. Life is short. You have to enjoy it." At first, I tried to avoid her. My parents noticed I was spending time with her and warned me. My father said, "That girl doesn't have the Spirit of God, Cherish. Be careful." But I was young, naive, and believed everyone could change. I told myself, maybe she just needs a good friend like me to guide her right. What I didn't know was that she was guiding me toward destruction. It started slowly. She'd ask me to skip choir practice and hang out with her. She'd show me videos and pictures I had no business looking at. She started using vulgar words and expected me to laugh. When I corrected her, she'd say I was judging her. She'd pout, apologize, then come back again, pretending to be remorseful. One day, I confronted her seriously. I told her, "Jennifer, I can't continue like this. You're changing, and I don't like the direction it's going." She got angry. "So you think you're better than me?" she shouted. Her words pierced my heart. I ended our friendship that day. Months passed. I focused on my faith again. I thought it was over. But one evening, she came to my house in tears. She told my mother she wanted to apologize. She said she had repented, started going to church, and even joined the youth fellowship. Her tears looked genuine, her words sounded sincere, and my heart softened. I forgave her. If only I knew I was welcoming a snake back into my life. That decision, that single act of forgiveness, became the doorway to the darkest season of my life. After Jennifer came back into my life, I truly believed she had changed. She spoke gently, prayed before meals, and even started quoting Bible verses. Sometimes she would call me just to pray with me over the phone. I was touched. I thought to myself, maybe God really used me to change her. I didn't know that behind her smiles, she was hiding darkness deeper than I could ever imagine. We started hanging out again, but carefully. I still maintained my boundaries. If I had to see her, it was always in public. She never complained. Everything seemed peaceful again. Then one Saturday afternoon, she came to my house wearing a white dress and carrying a small Bible. "Cherish," she said with her usual bright smile. "There's a prayer meeting at my family friend's house this evening. I really want you to come with me. It's a family I respect a lot, very spiritual people. I know you'll love them." At first, I refused. I told her my church had a youth vigil that night and I didn't want to miss it. But she held my hand and pleaded, "Please, Cherish. It won't take long. Just 2 hours. I need your company. I feel more comfortable when you're around." Her words touched me. She sounded sincere. So I agreed. That evening, around 5 p.m., she came to pick me up. I told my parents I was attending a prayer meeting with Jennifer. My mother was hesitant, but I assured her it was nothing bad. "Be careful. My daughter," she said as I left. "Not all prayers are from God." I smiled, not knowing how prophetic her words were. The house we arrived at was in Maitama, one of those quiet, expensive areas of Abuja. The compound was large, with shiny cars parked outside. I was surprised. "Are you sure this is a prayer meeting?" I asked. "Yes," Jennifer laughed. "The man of the house is a big philanthropist. He helps a lot of pastors." When we entered, I saw 3 other people, 2 young men and a lady sitting in the living room. Gospel music played softly in the background. Everything seemed normal. They welcomed me warmly, offered me snacks and a drink. After a few minutes, Jennifer excused herself, saying she wanted to help the hostess in the kitchen. I was left chatting with one of the men, who introduced himself as Daniel. I realized I had seen him once before. He was the same man who had been disturbing me on campus, asking me out, but I had politely turned him down. My heart started beating fast. I asked, "Wait. You know Jennifer?" He smiled. "Very well. She's like a sister." I didn't understand what was happening, but something felt off. I wanted to leave, but before I could say a word, my head began to spin. My body felt weak. The room started fading away. I tried to call Jennifer's name, but my tongue felt heavy. That was the last thing I remembered. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. I was still in the same room, my clothes torn, my body aching in ways I couldn't explain. Jennifer was nowhere to be found. My phone was on the table beside me with a text from her. "Sorry, dear. I had to rush home. My mom called. You were sleeping so peacefully, I didn't want to wake you." I sat up, trembling. Something inside me knew something terrible had happened, but I couldn't find the strength to understand it. I walked out of that house in tears, feeling dirty, broken, and confused. That night became the beginning of my shame, the day innocence was stolen from me. I couldn't sleep that night. My body ached, and my soul felt bruised. I tried to convince myself that maybe I had only slept deeply, that nothing had happened. But deep inside, I knew something was terribly wrong. I felt different, weak, sore, and ashamed for reasons I couldn't even explain. The next morning, I went straight to Jennifer's house. She welcomed me with a smile, pretending as if nothing had happened. "Cherish. You left early, I wanted to come check on you," she said. Her words pierced my heart. I was confused, shaking, and trying to hold back tears. "Jennifer," I asked, "what really happened last night? Why did you leave me there?" She frowned as if she was offended. "What do you mean? You were fine. You just slept off. Maybe you're overthinking things." She said it so casually that I started doubting myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just my imagination. So, I forced a smile and tried to move on. But no matter how hard I tried, the nightmares didn't stop. I started withdrawing from everyone. I barely spoke in class, avoided choir practice, and cried myself to sleep every night. I felt dirty. I felt like I had done something terrible. I begged God to forgive me, even though I didn't know what sin I had committed. Then, a month later, everything changed. I missed my period. At first, I thought it was stress. But when the second month came and went, I began to panic. I bought a pregnancy test kit and locked myself in the bathroom. My hands trembled as I waited for the result. When the 2 red lines appeared, I screamed and fell to the floor. My world crashed in that moment. Pregnant? How? I had never been with any man in my life. I ran to Jennifer's house again, tears pouring down my face. "Jennifer, I'm pregnant." I cried. Something happened that night, I don't know what, but I think, before I could finish, she stood up, pretending to be shocked. "Cherish, calm down. Are you sure? Maybe it's a mistake." Her calmness felt strange. She didn't seem surprised, only uncomfortable. That evening, I decided to visit the doctor for confirmation. The test came back positive. I almost fainted. The nurse tried to console me, but her words didn't matter. I walked home like a ghost, my feet barely touching the ground. When I got home, I tried to hide it. But mothers always know. My mom noticed my swollen eyes and quietness. She pressed me until I broke down crying and told her everything. from the night at the so-called prayer meeting to the text Jennifer sent, the look on her face that night still haunts me. She screamed, "Cherish! After all our warnings. How could you allow this?" My father came in, and when he heard the story, his anger was beyond words. He shouted, paced around, and finally said the words that tore my heart apart, "Leave my house, Cherish. You've brought shame to this family." I knelt down, crying, begging for forgiveness, but his mind was made up. That night, I packed a small bag and left home. I walked aimlessly on the streets of Abuja. Under the rain, crying and praying for God to take away my pain. I had nowhere to go, no one to call, and no hope left. That was when my story began to change, because in my darkest moment, God sent someone I least expected. That night, the rain poured like never before. I walked along the lonely road, soaked to my skin, my bag clutched to my chest. Cars passed by, splashing muddy water, but I didn't care. I felt empty, broken, and lost. Every step I took felt heavier than the last. I kept whispering, "God, please don't let me die like this. If you're still with me, show me mercy." I was tired. My legs hurt. I sat by the roadside near a quiet street in Guarimpa, trying to shield myself from the rain under a small shed. I wept bitterly. The sound of thunder didn't scare me anymore, nothing did. That was when I saw a car slow down and park a few meters away. At first, I thought it was just another stranger passing by. But then someone stepped out, holding an umbrella. He walked toward me quickly. When he got closer, I recognized him immediately. Brother Sam. Years ago, when I was still in secondary school, he used to come to our church. I once helped him with a small errand when he lost his wallet after a church program. Back then, he was a struggling young man, still trying to build his life. I never knew that same man would one day become God's instrument for my restoration. "Cherish?" he said in disbelief, lowering his umbrella to see my face properly. "Is this really you?" I looked up, trembling, unable to speak. My voice broke as I whispered, "Yes, sir." He knelt beside me, gently touching my shoulder. "What happened to you? Why are you out here like this?" The moment he said those words, I burst into tears. I told him everything, my friendship with Jennifer, the night of the so-called prayer meeting, the shame, the pregnancy, and how my parents chased me out. He listened quietly, without interrupting me, his eyes full of compassion. When I finished, he sighed deeply. "Cherish, I know you're hurting. But listen to me, this is not the end of your story. God hasn't forgotten you." He helped me up, gave me his jacket, and took me to his car. The warmth of the air conditioner made me shiver, but for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. We drove to his house in Jabi, a modest but beautiful home. His wife had passed away 2 years earlier, and he lived alone with his younger sister who helped him with his ministry work. She welcomed me with a kind smile and gave me dry clothes to wear. That night, Pastor Sam, as he was now known, made me a cup of tea and prayed with me. His words were gentle yet powerful. "Father," he prayed, "this is your daughter. The enemy came to steal her joy, but you are the restorer of broken hearts. Turn her shame into testimony." I wept as he prayed. For the first time since everything happened, I felt the presence of God again. It was as if light entered the darkness that had surrounded my soul. He didn't judge me. He didn't question my purity or past. He simply showed me love, the kind of love that reminded me of who God truly is. Over the next few days, he took care of me, made sure I ate, and encouraged me to start attending church again. He even visited my parents to speak with them, but at first, they refused to see him. He didn't give up. "She's still your daughter," he told them. "God is not done with her yet." The days that followed were like quiet healing after a long storm. Pastor Sam gave me a room in his house, and for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of worship music and the smell of breakfast prepared by his sister, Auntie Ruth. She treated me like a younger sister, never once asking questions that would reopen my wounds. Pastor Sam encouraged me to read the Bible again. At first, it was hard. Every verse about purity, sin, or righteousness felt like a knife to my heart. I would close the Bible and cry, whispering, "God, are you still able to love someone like me?" One morning, Pastor Sam called me into the sitting room. He smiled kindly and said, "Cherish, do you know why the devil attacks those who walk with God?" I shook my head, because he knows that when they fall, their testimonies will shake nations. What you went through was not the end of your faith, it was the beginning of a greater calling. Those words pierced my heart and brought tears to my eyes. For the first time, I stopped seeing myself as a victim and started believing that maybe, just maybe, God still had a purpose for my life. We began going to church together. Pastor Sam would often preach about forgiveness, restoration, and second chances. Every sermon felt like he was talking to me directly. People at church noticed me, but he never allowed anyone to mock or whisper behind my back. A few weeks later, he tried again to meet my parents. This time, he went with the church's elder. I was too scared to go with them, so I stayed home praying. When he came back that evening, he had a soft smile on his face. "They listened this time," he said. "Your mother cried the whole time, but your father, he's still struggling." I nodded silently. I knew my father. He was a man of principles, strong-willed, and sometimes hard to bend. But I also knew his heart. Deep down, he loved me. I believed that someday, God would touch him. That night, as I lay in bed, I placed my hand over my belly. I was 3 months pregnant. Instead of fear, I felt a strange peace. I whispered, "God, this child will not be a reminder of pain. Let this child be a symbol of your mercy." Weeks turned into months. I joined the women's fellowship in church and began helping in the children's department. Slowly, my laughter returned. The shame started fading. People began to see me as the cheerful, kind girl I once was, only stronger now. Then one Sunday after service, Pastor Sam asked to speak with me privately. I followed him to his office. Nervous but curious. He looked at me seriously and said, "Cherish, I've prayed about you for months. God told me something that I can no longer keep to myself." My heart pounded. He continued, "He told me that your life is not meant to end in disgrace. He asked me to help you rebuild it, completely. Cherish, I want to marry you, but first, I'll go and plead with your parents to take you back properly, so we can do everything in a Christian way." I froze. Marry me? I couldn't speak. Tears filled my eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming shock and gratitude. That night, I knelt in my room, crying and thanking God. It felt like a dream. A man of God, a pastor, wanted to marry a broken girl like me. I realized that day that grace truly finds us even in the ruins of our shame. The day Pastor Sam told me he wanted to speak to my parents again, I could barely eat or sleep. I was scared, not because I doubted him, but because I wasn't sure if my parents were ready to see me. Especially my father. The memory of his angry face the night he sent me out still haunted me, but Pastor Sam was calm. "Cherish," he said softly, "sometimes, God uses the people who hurt us to teach us the depth of his forgiveness. Just trust him." That Saturday afternoon. He wore his white shirt and navy blue trousers, his simple visitation outfit, as he called it. He prayed with me before leaving. I stayed behind, pacing the living room, holding my Bible close. I prayed like I had never prayed before. Hours passed before he returned. When he walked in, I noticed his eyes were red, not from anger, but from emotion. He smiled gently. "They've agreed to see you," he said. "Your father didn't speak much, but he didn't refuse either. Your mother cried throughout. I'll take you there tomorrow after service." My knees went weak. I couldn't stop crying. It felt like a door that had been shut for months was finally opening again. The next day after church, I followed Pastor Sam to our family house and was too. My heart pounded as we approached the gate. The security man recognized me but looked uncertain whether to let me in. Pastor Sam smiled and said, "She's expected." When we entered the sitting room, my mother was already standing there, her eyes swollen from crying. My father sat quietly on the couch, staring at the floor. I knelt immediately and burst into tears. "Daddy, Mummy. I'm sorry, I cried. I didn't listen to your warnings. I should have stayed away from Jennifer. Please forgive me. My mother ran to me, knelt beside me, and held me tightly. We both cried like children. My daughter, she sobbed, I've missed you every single day. I've been praying for you. My father sat still for a moment. Then, slowly, he stood up and came closer. His voice was low but firm. Cherish, he said, I was angry because I love you. You brought shame, yes, but who am I to reject the same child God has accepted again? I looked up, tears running freely. He stretched out his hand, helped me stand, and hugged me for the first time in months. That moment healed a wound that no medicine could touch. Pastor Sam stood quietly, watching us, smiling. Then he spoke, Sir, Ma, I didn't come here only to restore peace. I came with a request. I've prayed, and I believe God wants me to marry your daughter. But before that, she must come home. I want you both to be part of every step. My mother gasped. My father looked at him in shock. Pastor Sam, he said slowly, you're a respected man of God. My daughter is carrying another man's child. Are you sure you've prayed about this? Pastor Sam nodded confidently. Yes, sir. God told me clearly, her past doesn't cancel her destiny. The room went silent for a moment. My father turned to my mother, and she nodded with teary eyes. He sighed deeply and said, if that's truly what God said, then who are we to stand against it? I couldn't hold back my tears. That day, I saw God's mercy with my own eyes. From that moment, everything changed. My parents accepted me back. The church began the counseling and marriage process. Pastor Sam made sure every step was done decently, the Christian way. I was still scared of people's gossip, but Pastor Sam always told me, Cherish, let God rewrite your story. People will soon read it and glorify Him. He was right. My shame was gradually turning into a testimony. If anyone had told me that the same girl who once wandered the streets of Abuja in tears would one day wear a white gown again, not in shame, but in honor, I would have laughed in disbelief. But that's exactly what God did for me. After my parents accepted me back, preparations for the wedding began quietly. Pastor Sam insisted that everything be done modestly and prayerfully. We're not celebrating a man and a woman, he said, we're celebrating the mercy of God. The church was filled that day. People came not just out of curiosity, but because they had seen how God's hand turned ashes into beauty. Some came to whisper, some came to watch, but everyone left with tears in their eyes. I remember waking up that morning with trembling hands. My mother helped me dress, tears rolling down her cheeks as she adjusted my veil. You look like an angel, she said softly. Mummy, I whispered, thank you for forgiving me. She smiled through her tears. No mother stops loving her child. We only wait for them to come home. When I arrived at church, my legs could barely carry me. But the moment I saw Pastor Sam standing at the altar, dressed in a simple black suit with a peaceful smile on his face, strength filled my heart. He wasn't just marrying me, he was marrying my story, my scars, my pain, and my healing. The choir began singing Amazing Grace. The melody filled the church like a breeze of peace. As I walked down the aisle, I could see people whispering, some even shaking their heads. But I no longer cared. I kept my eyes on the altar and whispered, Lord, thank you for giving me another chance. When I reached him, Pastor Sam looked straight into my eyes and said quietly, Cherish, you are not what you went through. You are who God says you are, redeemed, loved, and chosen. Tears fell freely down my face. The ceremony was simple yet heavenly. Our pastor preached from 2 Corinthians 5 verse 17, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation, old things have passed away. Every word felt like a seal upon my heart. When the time came for our vows, I could barely speak. My voice broke as I said, I never thought I'd stand here again, but God's mercy brought me here. I promise to love, honor, and walk with you in faith all the days of my life. The congregation stood in applause as the pastor blessed our union. My parents held hands, smiling proudly through tears. It was more than a wedding, it was a victory over shame, a testimony that grace can rewrite any story. After the wedding, some people still gossiped. I heard the whispers, how can a pastor marry a pregnant woman? Others said he was desperate or deceived. But Pastor Sam never flinched. Let them talk, he said gently. One day, they'll see the fruit of what God is doing. And truly, they did. Months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. We named him Emmanuel, meaning God with us. Every time I looked at him, I saw proof that God turns pain into purpose. Pastor Sam loved him as his own. Not once did he remind me of my past. His love was pure, patient, and full of grace. That home became my healing place, a sanctuary of peace, laughter, and prayer. I learned that when God restores, He doesn't patch up broken things. He rebuilds them into something new, something stronger. It was a quiet evening in our home. Emmanuel was asleep in his cradle, and Pastor Sam and I were preparing for Bible study when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my spirit told me to pick it up. Hello? I said softly. A weak male voice came through, trembling and heavy. Is this Cherish? Yes, who is this? There was a pause, a deep, painful silence, then a whisper I could never forget. It's me. Victor. My heart stopped. The room began to spin. Victor, the man who raped me, the man who shattered my life, the man who left me bleeding and broken, what do you want? I managed to ask, my voice shaking. I'm dying. He said between coughs. Please. I need to see you. Just once. I froze. Part of me wanted to hang up, to erase his voice from existence. But another part, the part that had tasted mercy, couldn't ignore him. Pastor Sam noticed the look on my face. Who is it, my love? He asked gently. I swallowed hard. It's him. He said nothing for a moment, then nodded slowly. If the Lord is bringing this back, it's for a reason. You're ready now. That night, we drove to a small hospital on the outskirts of town. My hands were cold and trembling. I could feel the memories trying to claw their way back, but Sam held my hand the whole time. When we entered the ward, I almost didn't recognize Victor. The once arrogant, muscular man was now a shadow, frail, pale, and weak. His eyes widened when he saw me. Cherish. He whispered, his voice barely audible. You came. I stood there, silent, emotions raging inside me. Pain. Anger. Pity. Disgust. And somewhere deep, compassion. He began to cry. I was wrong. I destroyed your life. I thought I was powerful, but now I see I was just lost. I've had nightmares of your screams every night. Please. Forgive me before I die. I looked at him, this broken man who once broke me. Tears filled my eyes, and for a moment, I wanted to scream, to tell him how much he ruined my life. But then I remembered the cross, how Jesus forgave those who nailed him there. Slowly, I took a deep breath and said, Victor, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because God forgave me too. He broke down completely. His sobs echoed through the ward. Thank you, he whispered. You're free now. I turned to leave, but as I did, I heard his final words, faint, trembling, but filled with truth. Tell others that sin destroys. And mercy heals. That night, Victor died. I stood by the window of our home later, watching the stars. Pastor Sam came behind me, wrapped his arms around me, and said, You set him free, and yourself too. I nodded, tears falling. Yes, I whispered. Now I understand, healing isn't complete until you forgive. From that day, peace settled in my heart like never before. The nightmares stopped. The guilt faded. And my laughter returned. That was the night I truly became free, not just from my past, but from the weight of pain that once chained my soul. I still remember the first time I stood on a church stage to tell my story. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the microphone. The lights were bright, the hall was full, and the faces looking back at me were filled with curiosity, pity, and expectation. For a moment, I wanted to run away. The memories I had buried deep inside began to rise again, the night of the betrayal, the shame, the pain, the rejection. But then I heard a gentle whisper in my spirit, "You're not telling this story for yourself, you're telling it for the broken hearts waiting to be healed." I took a deep breath and said, "My name is Cherish, and this is my story." The hall went silent. Every ear leaned closer as I spoke. I told them how I was raised in a godly home by parents who loved the Lord and taught me to keep my body and heart pure. How I fell into friendship with a girl named Jennifer who pretended to be what she wasn't. I told them about my disobedience, my fall, and my pain, how I was deceived, drugged, and defiled. As I spoke, I saw tears rolling down the faces of mothers, daughters, and young girls. Some covered their mouths, others clasped their hands together. I told them how my parents disowned me, how I walked under the rain that night with nowhere to go, and how God sent Pastor Sam, the man who once was a stranger but later became my husband, to rescue me when I had given up hope. "My story is not about shame," I said, my voice trembling. "It's about grace. It's about how God can take ashes and turn them into beauty. How He can take a rejected life and make it a testimony." When I finished speaking, the hall was silent for a few seconds. Then suddenly, the sound of clapping filled the air. People stood, crying and worshiping God. Some ran to the altar, weeping and surrendering their pain to Jesus. After that day, invitations began to pour in. Schools, churches, and even women's conferences invited me to speak. I met girls who had gone through similar experiences, some raped, some betrayed, some abandoned. Many of them had lost faith in God. I didn't have big words to offer them. I only shared my heart, how I had once been broken too, but grace found me. Pastor Sam stood by me through it all. Sometimes, after a long day of counseling, I would break down and cry. Why did I have to go through all that pain? I once asked him. He smiled and said, "Because your pain was the seed of your purpose, Cherish. You didn't just survive, you were chosen to lead others into healing." Those words stayed with me. Soon, we started a ministry for young women called Daughters of Grace. We visited schools and universities, teaching girls about purity, self-worth, and the dangers of ungodly friendships. Each time I stood before them, I saw my younger self, innocent, naive, and trusting. And I prayed they would learn before it was too late. Years passed, and God continued to bless our home. We had 3 more children, 2 girls and 1 boy. We raised them with love and discipline, teaching them to fear God and choose their friends wisely. Sometimes, at night, when I watched them sleep, I thank God for giving me a second chance. The same girl who once walked the streets of Abuja in shame now walks in peace. Grace and victory. My pain didn't end my life, it birthed a ministry. My tears became my message. My scars became my strength, because when grace speaks through pain, no story is too broken for redemption. As I sit by my window tonight, watching the lights of Abuja shimmer beneath the dark sky, I can't help but think of how far God has brought me. The same city that once witnessed my tears now echoes with my laughter. The same streets where I once walked in shame now lead me to places where I share hope. Sometimes I close my eyes and see the young girl I used to be, innocent, full of dreams, and easily trusting. I see Jennifer's smile, that false sweetness that hid so much darkness. I remember my parents' voices, pleading with me to be careful, to stay close to God. If only I had listened sooner, but even then, I know now that nothing surprises God. He knew every step of my journey, even the ones that led me through pain. And in His mercy, He turned my shame into purpose. My life became proof that even after failure, there is redemption. That even after sin, there is forgiveness. That even after pain, there is beauty. Today, I stand not as the broken Cherish who lost her innocence through deceit, but as the woman who found strength in God's mercy. My husband, Pastor Sam, has been more than a blessing. He never once reminded me of my past. Instead, he helped me walk into my future. Together, we have built a home founded on prayer, love, and truth, our children, Emmanuel, Grace, and Daniel, have become living reminders of God's goodness. Each time they kneel beside us during family devotion. I remember the girl who once knelt alone in the rain, crying out to a God she thought had forgotten her. He didn't forget me. He never does. Jennifer and her accomplices are still serving their sentences. When I visited the prison with our outreach team years later, I met her face to face. She broke down and cried, saying, "Cherish, I destroyed your life." I looked at her through the bars and said, "You didn't destroy it. You only helped me find God." That day, we prayed together. She gave her life to Christ in tears. As I walked out of that prison, I realized that true forgiveness sets both the victim and the offender free. Now, every time I share my testimony, I see young girls who start crying halfway through. Some come forward, confessing things they've hidden for years. Some reconcile with their parents. Some return to God. And each time, I whisper within me, "Thank you, Jesus." My pain was not wasted. If my story could speak, it would say this: beware of friends who pretend to care. Not everyone who smiles at you means you well. Obey your parents. Their warnings come from love, not control. And above all, never think one mistake defines you. God's grace is bigger than your past. I learned that true beauty doesn't come from a perfect life, but from a redeemed one. My ashes turned to beauty because I allowed God to write the ending. As I turn off the lights and lay my head on Sam's shoulder, I whisper the words that have become my life's anthem. Though I walked through the fire, I did not burn. Though I passed through the flood, I did not drown. For the Lord was with me, and He turned my pain into purpose. My name is Cherish Frederick, now Cherish Sam. I am living proof that God still writes beautiful stories from broken lives.